So coming to the third cranial nerve, which is intimately related to the orbit because it is supplying most of the extraocular muscles, and it has some components also. It has not only a motor component, it has also a parasympathetic component which it carries. So this is the most important nerve for the orbit, is the third cranial nerve. So now coming to the main origin of this third cranial nerve. Now, if you take a section at the superior colliculus of the midbrain, very important. So, midbrain is the place where you have the third and the fourth cranial nerve originating from, and the third cranial nerve originates from the upper part of the midbrain. So, the section is being taken here is from the superior colliculus, and if you observe here that we are having, this is the superior colliculus. Okay, and this is the ventral aspect. So this is the ventral aspect, this is the dorsal aspect. Okay, so when we draw the midbrain as such, we have two colliculus, that is the superior and the the inferior colliculus, and the oculomotor nerve is originating from the level at the level of the superior colliculus and from the periaqueductal gray matter. Now, around the aqueduct, so if you see, this is the aqueduct, cerebral aqueduct. This is going to connect, let me draw the periaqueductal gray matter. So if you have this part, this is the periaqueductal gray matter. Okay, the nuclei of the oculomotor nerve are lying in the periaqueductal gray matter, and which is, you are having the two nuclei, the main motor nucleus, which is in the brown, you can see here, and another nucleus which is in the yellow, which is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus or the parasympathetic nucleus, which is associated with the oculomotor nerve. So let me draw the Edinger-Westphal nucleus properly. So this is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus which is on both the sides. Okay, and it will actually come down like this and cross along with the motor fibers. Okay, so this is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, fine, which is on the periaqueductal gray matter at the level of the superior colliculus in the midbrain, is the place where this nucleus, the origin of the oculomotor nerve, is happening. Now, to explain what is a nuclei, collection of neurons in the central nervous system is called a nuclei. So if you see a typical neuron, so if this is a typical neuron, okay, so this is a multipolar neuron, okay, and then you have the cell body, the nucleus here. This is the axon, okay. So axons are going to form the white matter or the tracts or the lemnisci, okay. So these are mainly by the axons, whereas these are the dendrites which are present here, and this group of cell bodies, that is the cell bodies of neurons. So multiple cell bodies together in the central nervous system is called a nuclei, okay. So what is a nuclei is very important to understand, because now we are going to talk only about the nuclei. So you have nuclei which are not a single nucleus or anything we are talking, they are just the cell bodies of the neurons which are associated, okay, which are associated with the oculomotor nerve or trochlear nerve or abducens nerve. So any nerve we are talking about which will be associated with a particular nerve, we are telling that oculomotor nuclei. So oculomotor nuclei means that it is all the cell bodies of the neurons whose axons will give rise to the oculomotor nerve. That's it. Okay. So the oculomotor nerve will have two nuclei. That's what we are saying. Two nuclei does not mean that two neurons. It has multiple neurons, multiple cell bodies of neurons will together form a nuclei or a foci which is within the central nervous system. Now, multiple neurons together may also form a foci which is outside the central nervous system, is called a ganglion. Okay, so you have to understand what is a ganglion and what is a nuclei first to understand the meaning of the oculomotor nuclei or the ciliary ganglion and all that thing. So once we are clear with the meaning of the nuclei and the ganglion, then we proceed to the different nuclei which are for the oculomotor nerve especially. So according to the functional components of the oculomotor nerve is a purely motor nerve. Okay. So it is a purely motor nerve. So it does not have any sensory component. The name itself is suggesting. Okay. Moreover, it is for the ocular movements. So that's why it is a purely motor nerve. Secondly, along with that, it also have a parasympathetic component, which is going to supply the intraocular muscles. So the purely motor component is for the extraocular muscles, whereas the parasympathetic component is also motor and it is going to supply the intraocular muscles. Fine? Okay. So now, once we have understood this basic point, then we are classifying the oculomotor nerve nuclei into a motor nuclei and also an Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Now this Edinger-Westphal nucleus is the parasympathetic component of the oculomotor nerve, but the nerve fibers will mix together and it will come out in the ventral aspect. So you can see it is passing through the red nucleus. At this section of the midbrain, you have the red nucleus, you have the substantia nigra, okay, so and also the crus cerebri. So it will be coming medial aspect of the crus cerebri and passing through the red nucleus and the substantia nigra, and it will come out in the interpeduncular fossa. Oculomotor nerve is a content of the interpeduncular fossa. Okay, so now let's understand the course from here. So you can see this is the midbrain. So if you see this carefully, you will be able to remember the course of the oculomotor nerve. So two nuclei of origin at the level of the superior colliculus. So you can even draw the superior colliculus over here. So these are the superior colliculus. Okay, fine. So this is at the level of the superior colliculus, and you have the nuclei over here. This is the motor nuclei. And this is the parasympathetic nucleus, which is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, and together this is forming the oculomotor nerve, and you can see it is passing between two arteries which are very, very important landmark. Okay, so this two, once it comes out, it is passing between the two arteries, that is at the upper border of pons, between the posterior cerebral artery and the superior cerebellar artery below. So it lies below the posterior cerebral artery, but it goes above the superior cerebellar artery. So two arteries are present at the upper border of the pons, where the basilar artery has divided into two posterior cerebral artery, and it has one of the last branch of basilar artery is the superior cerebellar artery. So between the posterior cerebral artery and the superior cerebellar artery, this nerve will be passing through that. So it will be just going below the posterior cerebral but above the superior cerebellar artery, and immediately enters into the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. So it will be related to the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, just over it. So just below that you have the trochlear nerve. So it will be passing through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Then it will divide into two divisions as soon as it leaves the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus into a superior division and an inferior division, and ultimately go into the orbit by passing through the superior orbital fissure, the middle portion of the superior orbital fissure. Now if you observe over here, the parasympathetic component has been denoted in the green color, and the parasympathetic component is going to join and continue along the inferior division of the oculomotor nerve, and it is going to relay. The parasympathetic ganglions are always located near the organ to be supplied. It is not near the central nervous system. So this is a ciliary ganglion which is responsible for the relay of the parasympathetic component of the oculomotor nerve, which is preganglionic, and that is relaying over here. You can see that it is relaying, and it is giving branches to two important muscles, which are the intraocular muscles, involuntary muscles, and these are the ciliaris and the sphincter pupillae.